Good morning, Raiders. My name is Ayana, your anchor, and welcome back to another episode of the Weekly Wrap. The Israel-Palestine situation has claimed tens of thousands of lives in a conflict so contentious that scholars can't even agree on when it began. Some say it began in 1948 after the United Nations proposed to divide the land into separate Jewish and Arab states. At the time, Palestine was a territory controlled by Britain named Mandatory Palestine. In 1948, Israel became its own state, and immediately the first Arab-Israeli war was triggered due to Arabs rejecting the plan. Ultimately, this resulted in 700,000 Palestinian Arabs being displaced. Others say that the conflict dates back to 1700 BC, when Jews were freed from slavery in Egypt and were settled in Israel. Nevertheless, the two territories have never been in agreement. On the early morning of October 7, 2023, Hamas, a Palestinian militant group located in the Gaza Strip, launched an attack on Israel at a music festival attended by 3,500 people, as well as IDF bases and civilian neighborhoods in Israel, where they murdered and kidnapped countless innocent people. Festival goers were shot as they ran, mass firing into the crowd, and were even hunted down and shot in places like porta potties and bomb shelters where they were hiding. Hamas described it as a response by the Israeli attacks on women, as well as the desecration of a mosque in Jerusalem. The event has since been described as the worst massacre on Jews since the Holocaust, and many believe that Hamas's attacks is retaliation due to decades of oppression by Israel.
Hamas is listed by the rest of the world as a terrorist organization, and their stated goal is to destroy Israel. Well, we can't ultimately destroy Israel. That's not going to work out. I have former students whose husbands are going out fighting in the reserves right now, and Israel hadn't expected, obviously, a war to happen with Hamas, and so they're sending soldiers out without equipment.
Hamas has also had an unknown amount of hostages from the first days of the attack on Israel. CBS claims that they have 200 hostages and 50 more held by affiliated groups. 4 have been released.
I think one thing that people need to know is that Hamas is a terrorist group by definition, but also a political party that's in charge of the Palestinian government since about 2005, 2006. That does not mean that Palestinian people belong or agree with what Hamas is doing. So we have to distinguish between the two.
Now let's talk about Israel's response. The Gaza Strip, which is a part of Palestine, refers to a narrow strip of land located in between Israel and Egypt on the Mediterranean Sea, and it's roughly the size of Washington, D.C. Hamas's attack triggered Israel to immediately declare war on Gaza. This was titled Operation Swords of Iron, striking what it claimed to be Hamas targets, along with beginning a siege, meaning that they block all resources and supply lines such as fuel, water, and food. The Israeli Defense Forces, or IDF, told Gaza civilians to leave the territory for their safety, and the next day bombed the corridor that they were told to exit through, killing dozens of people. Hamas has launched rockets into Israel, however, the amount of rockets is unknown due to Israel's missile defense system called the Iron Dome. Israel's goal right now is to eliminate Hamas. The Prime Minister of Israel televised an address to the people of Israel stating,
נהפוך אותם לאיי חורבות. אני אומר לתושבי עזה, צאו משם עכשיו, כי אנחנו נפעל בכל מקום ובכל העוצמה. בשעה זו מתארים כוחות צה"ל את אחרוני היישובים ממחבלים. הם עוברים יישוב יישוב, בית בית, ומחזירים את השליטה ליד.
How has this become a humanitarian crisis? Gaza City and Gaza Strip is the most densely populated place in the Middle East. With approximately 36,000 people per square mile, the high volume of citizens is a limit IDF has seemed to disregard.
I absolutely believe in Israel's right to exist, but I also really worry because Palestine is a walled-off nation.
Israel has destroyed neighborhoods, schools, and mosques, and as of this Thursday, over 7,000 people have been killed due to Israel's military, with half of the deaths being women and children as young as newborns. The actual figure is much higher due to this just being confirmed cases. Though its military says that it's only targeting Hamas weapons storage centers, the amount of destruction has contradicted that statement.
You hear stories about kids not having enough formula, like moms giving them half amounts, and they literally have nowhere to go, and they have almost no supplies, and that's heartbreaking too. With half of its population are children, which is crazy.
The World Health Organization has stated that Gaza is at its breaking point, with both major hospitals exceeding capacity as well as both hospitals being bombed. No resources will be allowed to Gaza until Israeli hostages are released and returned.
That does not mean that Palestinian people belong or agree with what Hamas is doing. So we have to distinguish between the two. Palestinian children and doctors and nurses and people in the Gaza Strip probably are not members of Hamas. Very important. And then Israelis, also, not every single Israeli believes what they're doing is correct. So we can't generalize things. The leaders of countries or the leaders of terrorist groups that wage war on people are rarely the ones that suffer the most. And who suffers the most is innocent civilians, and especially children.
The New York Times has reported that nearly half of Gaza's population has been displaced. That adds up to about 1.1 million people.
Mainly, I'm just really sad because neither side has a position that's going to allow forward movement very easily. It's a conflict that's been going on, obviously, since Israel was created, but even before then, ultimately.
As of Monday, Israel says that it hit 320 targets within 24 hours in Gaza. But the primary effect it has had is killing and targeting places where Palestinians were told to seek shelter.
All right, Raiders, I know this Israel-Palestine conflict stuff is confusing, and it's hard to figure out how you feel with all the information that's out there, but a couple pointers. One, don't trust social media. They are called influencers for a reason. Two, it's hard to get information from Gaza because there are very few journalists on the ground. And three, state sources like Israel and Hamas are fighting the war through the media, trying to win over the hearts and minds of citizens around the world. So ultimately what you can do, I think a good idea is to realize there's Israel's story, Hamas's story, and then in between there's the truth. And you can always trust the Raider Review to give you the best coverage you can find.
Thank you so much for watching this more significant episode. If you want to see more exclusive content and stories, be sure to check out our website, The Raider Review. My name is Ayana, your anchor for this episode, and have a Raiderific weekend. Bye!